Revelation 21. We are almost done with this book. But what else is left? God has already won. The bad people have been killed off multiple times. How do you wrap up a story that should have ended a long time ago? Simple. Talk about what life is like when all the baddies are gone. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." Oh, we get a brand new heaven and earth, because the old ones sucked, which is a weird way to describe the current concept of heaven. You think your loved ones are in heaven now? Guess what, kids? God is gonna destroy heaven one day. Bye, Nana. Again. And in the new heaven, there's no longer any water, which I am told is a good thing for some reason. Actually, it could be. Since 71% of Earth is water, getting rid of that gives us more room for people, who I assume will eventually be tortured by God whenever he gets bored. Somewhere, Noah is like, "Wait, you can just make the sea disappear? What the hell, God?" What will we do in the new heaven? Hang out with God and never suffer? Which is also the way Heaven 1 is described now? I mean, someone is lying. If there's no pain or death or crying in Heaven 2, what do they do all day? You can't have pleasure without pain. You can't try new things without the risk of failure. You can't appreciate beauty if you have nothing to compare it to. It sounds like nothing ever changes, which is horrible. Heaven 2 just sounds extremely bland and boring. He who was seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." Oh yeah, everything this dude on the throne is saying has been extremely believable so far. Look, whenever a man of God says he's telling you the truth, you gotta take that with a giant grain of Lot's wife. He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death." I thought there were no seas in Heaven 2. Where is this water coming from? Notice the enemies list. We are lumping together the cowardly, the atheists, the murderers, the Christians who got it on during Bible camp, Ted Haggard, magicians, liars, and every single person who hasn't heard of Jesus, including, I assume, babies. It is such a strange mix of people who are deemed God's foes. And if you're not one of those people, you get to hang out with the biggest murderer in all of fiction? Yay? You know, if Heaven 2 contains a fiery lake of sulfur that would really destroy the bad people, when Hell 1 could not, there is an argument to be made that Heaven is actually hotter than Hell. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And he carried me away in the spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Yeah, sure. I'll take a trip with one of the angels who unleashed destruction upon all mankind. That seems safe. Is he also driving a white van with free candy written on the side? And he's taking us to Jerusalem, which we are told is a gated community, even though there are no longer any enemies. The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it is long. The angel measured the wall using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits thick. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. Why are we measuring our land? You have everything. Acreage no longer matters. Are there property owners in heaven too? And it's as wide and high as it is long? What? Is this new city a literal cube? Or maybe a pyramid? Either way, it suggests there is a capacity, a limit, which is a strange way of describing the world when you've taken over all of it. Then again, 12,000 stadia is about 1,380 miles, which would be like from the ground to above the satellites currently orbiting the planet. So we have very high ceilings. Also, how the hell did the angel measure that length using a rod? You wouldn't measure the length of a marathon with a yardstick, but this dude's going to the International Space Station one stick at a time. Actually, if you do the math here, and I promise I won't, this area would be about as big as the known world at the time. Definitely bigger than the Roman Empire. So they're basically saying, we're taking over everything. Why is the city made of pure gold? That is a lot of gold, and it is way more gold than has ever existed, which suggests to me that this place is just faking it for the sake of appearances. And there are pearls everywhere. I mean, on the one hand, you can say these precious gems are now for public consumption, but also, what's the purpose of designing your gates with these gems that add no value to them? If you're looking at the gate and saying it looks beautiful, what are you really saying about the other areas of your utopia? I'm glad the walls look beautiful, but again, what are you separating yourselves from? Shouldn't everything be beautiful? Shouldn't there be no bad guys to protect against? This is like rich people showing off how wealthy they are. I don't care. You're just rich. The specifics are pretty meaningless at that point. You know what they haven't bragged about having in this utopia? Church. But I'm sure we'll get to that. I did not see a temple in the city because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, Nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. There's no church because everything is church. There's no sun or moon because we live in an imaginary place. Also, these people still think the moon gives off light because heaven too does not have science. And the gates will never be shut, which still makes me wonder why they have gates. You would think if the Bible wanted to convince people to believe in God, they would make heaven too the most incredible place imaginable. But none of this sounds fun. I have no idea what these people do all day other than worship God, which is my version of hell. Where's the art and sex and books and friends and families? There's no mention of any of it. We're just told this is what you want. But I don't think anyone's actually stopped to think it through.